It looks like the Trailblazers want to bring back Kevin Knox for one more season. Real quick, if you want to stay up to date on all things NBA, including news, rumors, and updates, please subscribe so you can stay alerted whenever these things come out. But Kevin Knox has been in the league for just enough time now to where he can be an asset to teams if they need someone like him. But then the important question comes up, which is, what do teams need him for? His career averages has been 7 points per game, and it's easy to think that that's been pretty underwhelming so far, and a majority of me agrees with that as well. You know, I don't see that as a player that I would be dying to get. But at the same time, you know, it makes me wonder if teams sign players like him whenever they have like an extra spot on the roster and they just kind of need somebody to be on the team. You know, it's not necessarily that they have something to offer on the court, but just more so that they have some leftover cap space. And, you know, here's a player that you don't have to pay that much and he can just be a part of your team. So it makes me wonder what exact role he's going to be playing for the Trailblazers this season. Up to this point, he has played 6 seasons in the NBA so far. So one thing he definitely has is the NBA experience. You know, being in the NBA means, you know, brutal workouts every single day. The regular season is just so long, so you're playing almost every other day, and you're constantly traveling in between those days. You know, you finish a game, you fly right away to the next city, and that kind of is a pretty difficult transition, I feel like. And so with him having played 6 seasons so far, one thing he definitely does have is that NBA experience. He also has NBA knowledge, I guess, for lack of better terms. Whenever you listen to like interviews from, you know, when players were in college and then they go to the NBA and they're asked like, hey, what's the biggest difference that you feel from college to the NBA? And, you know, they'll say that like, oh, when I first got to the league, the games are more intense. You're expected to do more. It's way more fast paced and it's just a lot more on the body as well. And that kind of ties back into that experience. And so I guess that's one redeeming quality that he has is even though he's putting up just 7 points a game, you know, he's kind of gotten used to this NBA lifestyle. And so it makes him somewhat of a reliable player. His first 4 seasons in the league, he spent with the New York Knicks, and then he spent a year in Atlanta, and then a year with Detroit, and then midway through, he was traded to Portland. And whenever I see, you know, transactions like this from teams, the first thing I think of is that, you know, teams don't have a use for a player like him. And I know that's maybe a little bit too harsh of a judgment on my call because maybe teams do have a use for him, but for some reason, whenever I look at like a player and the teams that he's played for, what I'm looking for is if they played like a majority of their career with one team, you know, and then I understand if at the end, you know, if they're starting to get bad and maybe they get traded or they leave to get more minutes somewhere else, I think all of that's completely normal. But when a player is relatively young and they're constantly being passed around, it just tells me that they haven't found that groove yet. And for him, it looks like he's kind of been struggling with that same thing, you know, countless teams, and it seems like they want to just continuously pass him around. Even though Portland is bringing him back right now, it's just on a 1-year deal. And so that alone tells me that, hey, they're not sitting here trying to give him any extensions or any long-term commitments. They're kind of just saying like, hey, stick around for a little bit longer and we'll see where it leads from there. The weirdest thing when I was kind of doing a little bit of research was he averaged his highest points per game when he was a rookie. That's also when he played the most minutes a game, and so I guess that makes sense. His rookie year, he averaged over 12 points a game, and then ever since then, you know, it's slowly been coming down. It's closer to like 5 points a game now, and that's usually not something you see. Usually players get better, and usually players are given more minutes, you know, the longer they've been in the league. But for him, it seems like they're starting to play him less. He definitely barely starts games anymore. I think he started for like 3 or 4 games last season. And so that's just something really weird that I noticed. Ever since his rookie year, it's kind of been like a steady decline. I also wonder, right now with everything happening with Portland, with Damian Lillard, and with them wanting to keep Lillard, I would think that they would make the best roster moves that they possibly could, to do everything they can to help Lillard stay. And one of which is going to be to bring players around him that are going to help him, help him score, help him play defense, help him win some more games. And it makes me wonder, was this the right move, right? What did they see in him that made them think that, hey, let's bring him back? I completely understand if he was just a roster filler, but at the same time, I don't think the Trailblazers are in a position where they can just be filling the roster with random people now. I think that they can be spending every minute trying to maximize every single roster position. And I'd rather have an overqualified player on the bench rather than somebody that's way underqualified. So I do wonder what they see in him to begin with. Given his play recently, and knowing that he was signed to just $3 million last year, I also wonder how much his salary is going to be this time around too. Again, just my gut tells me that he hasn't been performing well, and so he's probably not expected to perform any better either. If they know he's coming in averaging 5 points a game, 7 points a game, and barely playing, then likely his pay probably won't be that much. Probably close to 3, maybe even a little bit more. It's just hard to tell, I guess. But definitely nothing substantial for sure. Now, I do think that he has some upside, and I don't want to critique him too hard. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I will say that when he's playing well, he is pretty good off the bench. He can come in as the 7th or the 8th guy in the rotation, and he does a decent enough job when he's on the court. He's not the most consistent player, but if you need somebody out there to fill, to fill a spot on the court, to play a little bit of defense, just to let a few minutes pass until your starters can get back in, he's not a terrible choice, and I can definitely give him that. I also think that he is a role player. I think he has been a role player, and I think he's going to always be a role player. I think that's just how his NBA career is going to unfold. And I think he's still developing into that role player. I think he's still kind of perfecting, really even knowing where he's needed before he can excel at that. If he kind of realizes that this part of my game needs work or that part of my game needs work, and then he perfects that, then he can continue being a role player, and there's nothing wrong with that. And best case scenario is he becomes the best role player he possibly can be, and which for me, that's good enough. That's winning. Then I would want somebody like that on my team. He's also just 24 years old, and so it gives me hope that that development can still continue, because he's not at his prime. He's not close to his prime, and these next few years would be crucial for somebody like him. I also know that NBA teams sometimes have that mentality of, they want to fix a player. They want to be the ones to develop that player. They kind of want to find these used goods, I guess. They want to find these players that aren't really putting up great numbers, and they think that they can fix them, that can make them better, and then in return they're going to serve your team better. And in theory, that makes pretty good sense, right? He's in the NBA for a reason, but at the same time, I don't think that fixing a player should be a team's main priority. We have to keep in mind that the NBA is the best basketball league on this planet, and the NBA is extremely competitive. And just because a player has good potential and maybe he has a good future, it doesn't mean he has a good present. And I don't think teams should be locking players down on just the hope that they're gonna get better. Players getting better should be an individual motive for them, right? So if he's not good enough for the NBA, then I think he should not be in the NBA. But then if he wants to get better, then that's on him. He can go play internationally. He can go to the G League. He can do anything he wants to be a little bit better. And then maybe NBA teams can be like, okay, now you can sit on the bench. And I hope that teams kind of have that mentality, because I know I would. But then again, what do I know? I'm just a fan. I don't know as much as these executives for sure. But that's all I have for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on the Trailblazers bringing him back. Do you think they made a good decision, or do you think that roster spot could be better served with somebody else? I would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.